All right, everyone. Hello and welcome back to In the Red with Curtis White. I'm back here with my friend Tony Seiler. We just wrapped up. That was a hard weekend in Rochester. It was a fun course. It was great racing, but we're recording this on Tuesday. My body's still tired. I think I did a lot of that to myself, though. What do you think?
I think you definitely did a lot of that to yourself for sure. But it was a fun weekend. Maybe not quite what we wanted out of the whole weekend, but definitely a great weekend of racing and a lot of fun. I'm excited to talk about it with you.
Yeah, it was. And, last week we were coming off the high of Roanoke. We kicked off the season in style. It was very hot, fast racing down in Roanoke. Recovered well, had a nice week, and came to New York, my home state, a race that I've been going to for a number of years, Rochester Cyclocross. And man, for me, it was a bit of a disappointing weekend. Some things that were out of my control and some things that were well within my control that I made some poor decisions on, but we can dive into that. It was a fun course, though. There was a lot of wide open sections where you could really lay down the power, and then there were a few big bottlenecks in the course. So positioning was going to be important throughout the entire weekend. And what are some things you noticed, Tony? You were actually there. That was
I was there, which was super fun. Like, I actually got to go to the race, the first pro race I've been to in 2 years, probably since last time we were at Rochester, or maybe something else in 2019. But a lot of fun to actually be there. I haven't watched the live stream yet, so I only saw it from the perspective of being there. But it was a blast. We were hanging out with friends. I got to see so many people and go around and watch the racing. And we got to drink some New York Curtis Cyclocross Pilsner, which was a huge hit. They sold out of the whole weekend's worth of beer in 2 hours. It was killer. Everybody was asking for it. Everybody was partying on the course with it. So we had a great time there. The double trouble on Sunday was some of the most fun I've had at that race, cheering on a pro race. That part of the course was really fun. So we should probably talk about that and how to ride that. But overall, just a great weekend.
It was. And the one thing that I noticed as an athlete, there were more spectators at this race than I ever recall there being. I think that the hype is real. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are just excited to be coming back to these races. And I've seen this at a couple races now where it's not only the people already in the cycling community. I think there were a few folks that I met that came up to say hello that weren't racers this weekend.
There were a lot.
That's the cool part about, and cyclocross has this massive opportunity to be this massive community event. And it's a family environment where you just go to a park setting, you can hang out, you could see most of the race from 1 or 2 vantage points. I remember being a young kid, my parents would just say, here, run around, see you in 6 hours. Mm-hmm. And we, as young racers, we had other racer friends and we just see our parents 6 hours later. But there is that family environment, that community environment aspect to it. And there were people there that weren't already in the cycling community. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, there were a lot of people that I hung out with that, some of them were racers, maybe who race road or maybe, used to race cross or whatever. But I hung out with a ton of people who were not racing that weekend that showed up just to watch the racing, which was a lot of fun. It's a great way to go and chill out. I brought my daughter. She rode her bike around all day long and had a great time cheering on the racers and seeing it firsthand, close up for the first time that she could remember in her young life and really pay attention to it. So it was a hit.
Yeah, it was great to see Magnus Sheffield showed up. He's a local to the Rochester area, but young guy, formerly racing for Cannondale Cyclocross World, the Devo team, went on. He was just competing at the World Championships in Belgium for the road and just recently signed for Ineos at the World Tour level.
I know. I'm really happy for Magnus. I love Magnus. He's a great kid. He's raced in some of the gravel races I put on. He came to my school once after he was in the Worlds and finished third at the Junior World Championships. Came to school, talked to all the kids about the experience. So he's an awesome kid. I'm a little disappointed I have to root for Ineos now, though. That was the only thing. That's the only thing that's a bummer about it. But I'll take it. I'm an Ineos fan as long as Magnus is on the start list. I'm in.
All right, fair enough. He was pulling my leg a little bit on Sunday. He was like, yeah, Stu said he had a couple extra bikes, so I'll see you on the start line today.
I'd like to
But
see
that's
him race
Magnus.
across again.
Yeah, I would love to see Magnus race cross again. I'd feel sorry for the bike though. I think there's so much power being put down. He's, probably break a chain or the cranks or something. The
Something,
kid's got so
definitely.
much power. Anyway, on to the racing. Let's dive into it.
All right. So let's talk briefly about Saturday. There's not a ton to discuss, unfortunately, because the mechanical took you kind of out of contention pretty early. Sort of a bummer. I was actually on double trouble where you were going through it the maybe less exciting way, I guess, or of the 2 days. But you came in it and I turned around and watched the guys come out of it and you didn't come out of it. So kind of a bummer there. And then you fought back with a respectable position. But what's the mindset when that happens and like, I'm not winning today, but you still go out there and put that effort in? Like, how does that work?
I convinced myself that I was still in it for the win, or at least a podium position. And I think also with it being a New York race, I had a lot of what felt like my home crowd there. My family was there. New Yorkers that I've grown up with for and known for so many years were there. It felt like a home race to me. So I didn't want to give up. That was the extra motivation to keep pushing on. And look, it's cyclocross. It's chaotic. Things happen out of your control. And that's sport. You have highs and lows, and it's all about how you react to these unfortunate or unpredictable situations. So not everything goes your way. It was a really big bummer. It was a missed opportunity, but I tried my best to put that behind me and tried to press forward the best I could. Convinced myself that I was still in a position to make it back to the front. And the reality is that the course was so fast and the level was very high to where you can't always close those gaps. So I fought back as much as I could, brought back as many positions as I could, and I still finished, I believe, 7th on the day, which, given everything that went on, it was an effort that I was happy with. I had good, the fight was there, the form was where it needed to be, and I was riding technically a very good race. Just a couple things out of my control, and there's really not much to go over from my end. Anytime there's a setback and you have to sit back and watch the battle from the, a few seats back, and you see what's going on up front, and you think, damn, that should be me up there. But trying to keep a clear head about it and just moving on. I mean, again, there's no sense in kind of beating a dead horse with it. Just it happened, move on. I still have good form. I still have, technically, I've made some very good improvements, and it's on to the next opportunity at that point.
Yeah. I mean, you went out, you put on a good effort, and I'd hate to see anybody quit, and would never expect you to quit in any capacity. So that was awesome to see, and kind of is what it is that day. I love to see on Saturday, Caleb Schwartz had a great ride. He had some bad luck at the end that cost him a few place finishes. He was contending for 4th and I think had a great shot at it, but he's been on the show before, and a young kid in his first year racing elite, and it was awesome to see him. So congrats to him on a great ride, even though he ended with a little bad luck as well.
Yeah. Caleb is one of those athletes that I've known for a number of years. He's climbed the ranks a couple of years behind me, but he now has his own program, and he's full on living for sport right now, living for cyclocross. And that's really good to see. But it was unfortunate to see so many athletes through the weekend having the same mechanical issues. So we're not going to speculate on what was going on, but yeah, it's, in sport, it's always unfortunate when you see those things, but it's also, you dust yourself off and you move on. You keep your head up and keep looking for the next opportunity and keep fighting.
All right. Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about the next opportunity. You get that on Sunday. Before we kind of break down the way Sunday played out, what's the mindset going into Sunday coming off of that frustration? Like, how do you address that and kind of shake it off, especially given the fact that it was a first C1 and there was some pressure around it? Sunday had to have a certain mentality going in.
Yeah. And, to be honest, how I should have approached Sunday was not how I actually approached Sunday. I was angry. I was pissed. I wanted to fire back as hard as I could. And to that point, it's a New York race, and it's a race that I've won before. And my family's there, my friends are there, people are enjoying ice cold New York Curtis cyclocross pilsners on the side. It was, it's the first race with the team back together, and I wanted to hit back as hard as I could. So um, I wanted to create some separation earlier in the race. For a lap or two, stay ahead of the scrum. There's a lot of, again, talking about these bottleneck points on the course where positioning was important. And you had this accordion effect where if you're in a group of 6 or 7 riders, the riders in the front aren't accelerating nearly as hard as the riders in the back, because there's this accordion effect where the riders in the front are much more smooth, and the riders in the back have to brake a little bit more and then accelerate harder afterwards just to hold the wheel. And I got this in my head where if I stay ahead of that accordion for a big portion of the race, what happens if I ride everyone off my wheel? Maybe I was a little overconfident in my abilities, or I was tired from the previous day, but it was, at the end of the day, I wasn't a very cagey racer. I tried to force the situation too much, and to be critical of myself and frank, I kind of raced like a pissed off 19-year-old. And it's really cool that we have GCN covering these races now, and we can actually go back and rewatch some of the races. And I'll be honest, I tried to rewatch Sunday's race, and it was kind of difficult for me, just having that hindsight 2020 and saying, what was I thinking? Because it wasn't just a couple laps on the front to try and split things up and then regroup to see what happened with the race. It was 4 or 5 laps. And I kept looking back and thinking, all right, I'm going hard. These guys must be hurting as much as me, if not more. The accordion, the elastic has the snap, the accordion's in full effect. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And these guys are hurting. I know it. There's a little bit of a gap here. It's going to happen. And, there was a bit of wind on the course, and on these longer straightaways, I really underestimated how much of an effect that had on the group, because there was a drafting effect on some of these straightaways. And I didn't realize that until 3 laps to go, or whenever I went back into the wheels, and I knew I was in trouble at that point. It wasn't that I was in bad position. I'd wasted so much energy. So kind of relying too much on my power and strength and forcing the situation too much. I showed my hand way too early in the race.
Yeah, no doubt. You definitely came out hard, and at first that was really fun because you didn't get to perform the way you wanted the day before, and a lot of us were really excited for that race on Sunday, and kind of like, what's Curtis going to do? We knew you were amped up for the weekend, and you weren't happy with Sunday or Saturday rather. So, there was that sort of feel in the crowd of like, oh, what's he going to do? And then you just came out just balls ablazing, man. And then kept going and going and going. And I don't know, I can't speak for the guys racing, but it did look like they were, feeling it to a degree until they weren't, and until it kind of popped there, which was certainly unfortunate in the way that came about. What's your mindset once you kind of realize that? Like, is that a conscious thing, or are you just too gassed to process it in the moment? Like, is there a point in the race where you're like, oh damn, that was not what I should have done?
When you're in that situation, you really can't think, in hindsight, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. You kind of have to have this, in certain situations, have like the memory of a goldfish is something that I heard recently. But yeah, forget about it. Okay, I'm in this moment right now. How do I react to this moment? There was a point with about 3 laps to go. I thought, all right, I'm in trouble. I need to, I can't remember the last time I wasted that much energy in a race. So it was just, okay, how do I proceed from here? What decisions do I need to make? How do I need to ride the course? How do I have to, because I still believe that I was in contention for the win, but there was a little bit of a separation. Stephen Hyde, Vincent Bustens, and Kerry Warner were able to ride a couple sections just a little bit better than me, and that created the gap. And they were still within 10 seconds of me for the majority of the race, but they just they were able to surge very hard at the end, and those are the efforts that I didn't have. And that, I mean, that was the race. There's no sense in kind of over analyzing it other than that. It was just poor decisions on my part, and learn from that and move forward.
Just in general, when you're coming into the season now, and this is the first year you're not racing with Steven, and you guys are at the front, does that change your strategy, knowing that you're not really playing off of each other to dwindle the group or anything in the way that you used to be able to? Do you have to think about that differently, or look at him differently, or race with him differently? And is that hard to retrain when you've raced with him so much?
I mean, you certainly have to look at it a little bit differently, because for us, our main objective was to put Cannondale on the top step. And when we came into the season in 2019 and we were racing against a few Belgians in Rochester, we wanted Cannondale on the top step. That was the biggest goal. Or any year previous, that's the goal. And there was there weren't these complex tactics, but whittle the group down until it's down to us two, then we race it out. And I still had to understand Steven's strengths and weaknesses. So I've known him for many years. I've raced with him for many years. And this is the first time that we're racing against each other on different teams. But I still understand how he rides and how he races head to head. So it doesn't, the instinct isn't really influenced all that much, but it's a new dynamic to the racing. And it's exciting now. I mean, from a spectator's point of view, and especially now, there are more people that have access to spectating these events through the broadcasting. I think that makes the racing very exciting now.
Yeah, no doubt. Speaking of that, what has been the feedback you've gotten since the weekend on the coverage, and people that were able to see it from around the country that weren't present like we were able to be?
I'm still trying to look at what the coverage was, and just finding the time to rewatch some of these races. I think it's so cool that as an athlete, being able to go back and rewatch the race and have that bird's eye view of what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? What were the other guys actually doing? How were they riding? What were their faces like? Because you can only see that when you get these glimpses behind you. And even then, we've had great coverage with Bill Scheiken providing great videos after the races, and you're able to see bits here and there, but they're recap videos. You don't see the entire race.
Right.
Oftentimes there are these deciding moments that come down to a split second. And if you have the broadcasting and it's high quality, you're able to see that. What I was able to notice is that the quality on Saturday wasn't top notch, or what I think a lot of people were expecting. And I think a lot of that honestly comes down to there's a lot of chemistry and flow that goes into team building wherever you go, whether it's in sport, in athletics, or in the professional world, or whatever. You had a crew coming into a new situation, and they had to kind of learn from a ground level where, how are these races going to go? What was the flow going to be like with the cameras, how to communicate with each other? And I think I was able to see this. There was a substantial improvement in quality between Saturday's coverage and Sunday's coverage. And it's great. I mean, it's to expect that this is going to be the best coverage that we've ever had right out of the gate. I mean, it's a little not unrealistic, but I think there's a lot of people who don't understand how much goes into making this possible and accessible for so many people. So yeah. I think that there is a learning curve to go with it. I'm not going to pretend to know what needs to be done from the technical side. That is well outside my realm of knowledge. But I think they hit their stride a little bit more on Sunday, and I hope they're able to continue to improve, because we do have awesome battles that we want to showcase and show the world. We want to show the world how unique and interesting and exciting U.S. cyclocross is. And we have that opportunity and ability now, but I think it's, we're catching our stride with it. So I think that there's still a lot of really exciting things to look forward to. And even then, not with a series, we have 3 other televised events that we're going to have with the World Cups. You know, I did another podcast recently where we were talking about how many US races over the years have actually been televised. You know, originally it was maybe Cross Vegas and um, you know, we had the world championships in Louisville, then we had the World Cups coming. We had, you know, one, then we had two. Now we have 3 World Cups, and then we have 8 races within the series, and then the world championships coming. That's 12 televised opportunities that we have, plus our national championships now this year. That's 13. 13 televised opportunities for this country's for cyclocross in this country. Those
Yeah,
are
that's
opportunities
awesome.
we've never had. So, yeah, they are limited opportunities. There's more opportunities than we've ever had in the past, and we do need to make those count. But there is a little bit of a learning curve, and I do have confidence and faith that they're able to continue to improve the quality. And I think it's really cool that we're able to showcase these battles. That's just that. Honestly, that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, I haven't watched them yet because, like I said, I was there, which is cool, and I didn't have time to go back and re-watch them to see how the coverage went. But I'll definitely be watching the other ones because I won't be at the other races, so I'm looking forward to watching them. One thing I thought about though, and I'm wondering if anybody listening has done this before or would give us any feedback on it, but I never thought about this till after the fact. But I guess I could have turned on the live stream on my phone while I was there watching the race to see where you guys were at different points when I wasn't standing, because in the race, you're only seeing where you're coming by or where you can see in the course. And the course there is pretty well laid out for spectators where you can see a lot of it, but you are missing certain things that are happening too, where they're on different parts of the course. So I thought, man, I probably should have tried to turn my phone on and maybe stream it. But then I kind of like just being in the moment and being at the event and being with the people who are at the event. So I don't know. What do you think? Is that something you would do if you were watching a race? Would you walk around and live stream it on your phone at the same time or not? Is that a good way to view it?
I wouldn't, but I think one thing that comes to my mind is that with a lot of the European races that are televised, they have the televised coverage on these big jumbotrons. They have a couple of them throughout the course. So if you're hanging out in the beer tent and you don't want to be running all over the place following the races and trying not to spill your beer, they have a big jumbotron screen where you're able to watch all the parts of the course that you can't see, and that's what they have on live TV. That's a really cool aspect. That, I mean, again, that's a lot of money and resources that have to go into that.
Sure.
And maybe we, from a spectator's point of view, that again, I said this earlier, it seems as though, from my perspective, that we're seeing more spectators at these events live. I think the events that we've seen are certainly very special events, and we may not see that through the entire season, but you have enough spectators at these European races where it makes sense to have these jumbotrons where you're not having to take your phone out and actually follow the race on your phone and looking at this little screen. You have 1,000 eyes on the same screen, able to follow the race along. And the one thing there were some blind spots on the course. You couldn't really see everything. And I mean, we can get into this conversation about the difference between American courses versus European courses. And I'm not talking about, the flow of the course, but maybe I am talking about the flow of the course, but it's a lot of European level courses are made for professionals, but they also can take into consideration courses being built for TV coverage, where if you have 8 or 10 cameras, where are you going to place them? You're going to have longer straightaways. So there's more time spent on, more of the course, parts of the course that double back on each other. And there are, if we only had access to 8, 9, or 10, maybe 10 cameras over the course of this past weekend in Rochester, there were still some blind spots in the course. And that's also a reflection of American races, rather, are driven by amateur participation. A lot of those registration fees fund these events. They make sure that the barricades are there. They bring the officials in. They provide the infrastructure for these events to go on. And a lot of the courses that are built are made with that consideration in mind. It's more about the experience on these courses. And there's a lot of tight winding turns. With Rochester, you have this section in the backside. They call it the jungle. Then you have double trouble. And then you had the north side of the course where on day 2, they were able to They didn't have this on day one, but day two, they were able to get drone footage, which is an awesome perspective, I think, to have, because you're able to follow the athletes for a minute and a half on this part of the course through a long straightaway. But I think that with 8 or 9 cameras, that the 8 or 9 cameras that they had, there were still some blind spots, particularly in the backside and the jungle area or the half pipe, where yes, we could get a glimpse, but it's still, you're missing big technical parts of the course. So I'm that may be a big consideration that US promoters have to make going forward, or take into consideration. How are they going to construct their courses going forward if there's going to be live TV coverage?
So with this shift here, if Curtis can take out his crystal ball and look at like what cyclocross is going to look like down the road, right? I don't know if we're talking about 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever you want to come up with, but we talk about the difference in the economic model and the amateur, the way the amateurs push that. Do you foresee being the economic model shifting with more TV coverage and therefore it pushing away from the amateur racing in the US? Or do you think that's something we'll hold on to? Like, will they start cutting amateur fields or start creating courses more for pros? I mean, for example, the promoters who put on Rochester Cross also put on the Twilight Crit in Rochester, and they no longer have amateurs, or at least the last couple of years did not have amateurs race before that crit because of various economic factors that they were working with. So it's not unprecedented for them to make a shift like that. Would you see that happening in professional racing in US cyclocross with TV coverage that can open up to advertising, and now maybe more pressure being played to, let's play to the fan watching it more so than the racer who's coming to race it as an amateur?
I don't know, to be honest. I think that, I mean, we're talking about the majority of people who go to bike races are racers themselves. So that concept is pretty cool, that everyone you see around you is also a racer. But we're still dealing with this idea that cycling is still a little behind culturally in the United States compared to other big sports. You don't go to Iowa City and you're not going to get 10,000 people from Iowa City or the college students to come watch the bike race. You'll easily get 50,000 people to go watch the football game that weekend, the college football game. But culturally, we're behind.
Think about it this way. What if the fans that we're playing to are not American fans? It's not about the fans who are there present. It's about the fans who are watching it. So if people are watching it all over the world and there's enough viewership all over the world to put sponsorship into those television coverages, aren't we then driven by what they want to see, which might be what you're talking about, changing courses, changing formats, cutting costs in different areas to make those better? Could we see a model where US cyclocross is actually playing to European fans as an economic model?
Yeah, maybe, but I mean, you're also going to need a lot of sponsorship dollars to make that happen, and you're always going to need people to come watching the races on site live. And that's the best part about sport, right? Is interacting with the fans, the people who are passionate about the sport. And I don't think that's ever going to change, no matter what sport you're in. I'm sure the NFL, they don't need to be packing these massive stadiums. It certainly helps, but the TV coverage, the sponsorship dollars that come on with that, that is a big part of that scene. This is what we need to help progress the sport in North America, to get sponsorship dollars involved, to grow teams, to grow support for the athletes, and to grow the access to more spectators and fans, and to, more people who are interested in the sport, and hopefully increase the talent pool of people who want to compete in cyclocross, more young athletes that come into the development pipeline.
I got it. Just, not that I'm hugely involved in the development process, but I got a text Monday from somebody who said, "Hey, I was at the race and I think my nephew will be into this. Where can I go to show him what this looks like?" So how many conversations like that happened after that weekend. You know, I was involved with one of them, but you know, how many are going on because of those things? So those are the things we definitely want to hear. Anything about the women's racing that you were able to see? I know as a racer, you know, you're probably have your attention split there as you're kind of getting ready for your own race, but also keeping tabs on your teammates and what's going on. But you also had the opportunity to potentially go back and watch some of that. So any impressions there, or anything you want to hit before we talk a little about what to expect this weekend?
Yeah, it was for us, for the Cannondale team, it was the first weekend that everyone was together in the same place, and that was really cool to get the team back together. And I was paying attention to the, you know, Clara and Katie, both Katies. Clara second both days. It was really great to see. Um, you know, both Katies had strong rides on Sunday, and I mean, I was able to see how Magali was also riding. She's so strong right now, and I think she's done this in the past where she comes into the season and she's flying, and it's awesome to see. And we have the World Cups on home soil in the next couple of weeks, so she's on good form for that. I think Clara's on the up. I think Katie Keogh and Katie Klaus are on the up too. I think it was a really dynamic race. It was really cool to see, especially when you get to the battles for the podium, because Magali was off the front very early in both days.
Oh my gosh. I mean, what a performance. Like, if there was a rider of the weekend, I don't think there's any doubt who it is. I mean, she just crushed both those fields both days. Just so strong. Unreal.
Absolutely. But it was really exciting to see that. And you know, I know how it's, I mean, I talk with Clara and Katie Klaus and Katie Keogh regularly, and I know how hard they work, and they're you know, they're thinking about, yes, we have these early season goals, but also they're going to Europe earlier in the year than I am. And the biggest goals are later in the year. So I think they're, you know, especially Clara, she's playing the long game. She had a longer road season. She had some excellent rides racing with Tipco over the summer. So it's going to be exciting. You know, it's certainly an exciting year, and I'm excited to see where they go. They're certainly on the up.
Definitely. Yeah, it was great racing. So how about, what do we expect going into Charm City here? Maybe what are you doing right now personally? What's sort of your mindset as you transition off this weekend and you're looking ahead?
There's this kind of natural amphitheater shape to this park, or it's a bowl shaped park where there is going to be some climbing. There's going to be a bit of elevation change, and it's a similar, there are parts of the course that have small bottlenecks, but it's not as severe as a Rochester. So it's a hard course. And it'll be an exciting one for me. Or for the men's side, we're going to deal with Chris Blevins is going to be taking the start line. There's been a lot of talk in the press and a lot of eyes on him. He's coming off of a World Cup win in snowshoe, so he's obviously going very good. You know, and he's raced road at a high level, mountain bike. He's, I believe, an under 23 cyclocross national champion. He won that in Reno. So he knows how to ride a bike. There's no secret about that. So, you know, I need to be a much cagier racer coming into this weekend. Hyde is going well. Carey's going well. Gage had a strong ride. He was coming back from a few rows back. So maybe he just needed to get some points before he can race comfortably within the front group. But it's going to be a very dynamic race, and it's a harder course. There's going to be a lot of hard pedaling, but also some good technical features to it. Positioning is going to be a factor later in the race. I think it's one of those races where maybe you can sit back a little bit and kind of watch, but not too far back. I wouldn't want to be more than 6 or 7 wheels back. And I need to be a cagey racer, you know, learning from Hyde and Carey, and certainly someone like Blevins. He's an experienced and mature racer where he's not going to be showing too much too early. He's going to keep his cards close. So it'll be an exciting weekend, certainly. I haven't seen what the weather's going to look like, but we've done this race where it has been raining, and we've had some slick conditions. There are parts of the course that are heavy. We've done it in dry, fast conditions. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Blevins. I know a lot of fans are, for sure, to see sort of what dynamic he brings, and he's had an amazing last couple of months here. So seeing how he mixes things up, and where that takes you guys, like who's got to pay attention to who maybe a little differently now with him with him mixed in. I feel like there was a lot of maybe, I don't know, pressure on you. Maybe you felt it, maybe not, but just from a fan perspective of sort of, well, what's Curtis going to do here last weekend, given the way that you won the first two, and then you had a mechanical, especially on Saturday and coming into Sunday, maybe sort of all eyes were kind of on you dictating the race to some degree. And then Blevins coming in is going to really switch that up a lot, I think. And then you can't just pay attention to one guy when you have that much depth in the field. And not to take anything away from Steven and Kerry and those guys' ability to win a race by any means. So, but I think that's good. One of the things that sometimes is not as interesting about cyclocross is when you have a field where one guy runs away from it or one rider runs away from it every single week over and over and over again. And we've seen that. And from a fan perspective, sometimes, you know, the race is done after the second lap. It's nice to see that depth and the fact that we have no idea how that's going to play out next week.
There's a lot of excitement around the sport and seeing new athletes coming into the fold, and it's just, there's a lot of unknowns and uncertainties, and there's people are on their edge of their seats and they're really excited to see what happens. So I think we're looking forward to some really exciting battles on some really great courses coming up, and my hope is that the coverage continues to improve and we'll be able to showcase those battles to a really broad audience.
Yeah, me too, because I'm going to be watching this one from my couch. So I'm hoping that the coverage is spot on so that I can see everything for the whole race. Is there any indication that, or anything you know about how many Blevins is looking to do? Is this like he's in for the season? Is he just jumping into one and then going to do something else? I know he's bounced around between some road stuff. Obviously, he's very focused on mountain bike. Are we going to see him throughout the season? And if not, does that change how he races and how you guys race, who are more invested maybe in the series and the points than if he's just jumping into a couple?
Yeah, to be honest, I really don't know. I'm very curious to see what his plans are for the entire season. I'd imagine he's in for nationals and going for the world championships on home soil. That's a big deal. But I don't know. I'm not, to be honest. He's an exciting factor for the US scene. He has a lot of fans, but you know, for me personally as an athlete, it's just one of those things. I'm not going to speculate on it too much, and I'm just going to keep focusing on what I'm doing, focusing on my process. If he's doing something, he can go do it over there. I'll do my thing over here, and then, you know, I'll see you at the races, and hopefully I'll bring my best.
All right. That's the way to do it. So what else you got, man? Anything else for us before we part for the day?
Not a lot. I think we covered a lot. We were able to talk about this weekend in Rochester. Talked about, and I didn't know that they sold out both the weekend's worth of beer that quickly.
Yeah,
that was really cool. I mean, there were a lot of people coming up. I saw a lot of New York Curtis cyclocross pilsners out there, and people were able to enjoy it. And thanks to Steuben Brewery and Rohrbox for able, you know, coming together and making this happen and bringing this beer to this crowd. And I mean, we're still working on getting it to more races, but no, it was really cool to see.
Yeah, it was a huge hit. They didn't sell any on Sunday because they sold it all on Saturday. So good problem to have, I guess.
Well, if you're still looking for it and you're in Western New York, go to a Wegmans, or I believe they sell it at Tops too, but some of these bigger stores, or just go to the brewery, the Steuben Brewery.
Yeah, they're still getting.
That's probably the best thing.
But go to the brewery, and even if you hit this right now and you're this week, I think it's this weekend, they're doing some gravel rides from that brewery. So yeah, this coming weekend. So if you're around in the area, go on Bike Ride. You can find it on there, and go down to the brewery, ride with the crew, and get some New York Curtis that way.
Also, in addition to that, my home club that I grew up with, the Capital Bicycle Racing Club, CBRC, based out of Albany, they're putting on a race in Troy, New York, in a couple of weeks, the Uncle Sam GP cyclocross. It's a really fun race. It's formerly a part of the Nycross series. Now CBRC runs it. And this new New York Curtis cyclocross Pilsner will be some of the prizes on the podium. So if you're doing well at the Uncle Sam GP in Troy, you'll get a case.
Very good. All right, bro. Well, I think that's it for this week.
Yeah, that's it.
We're headed to Charm City.
Headed to Charm City. We're heading down there Thursday. Hope to see you at the race or following along on GCN. So before we wrap this up, just want to give you all a quick reminder. If you haven't done so yet, I encourage you to like, share, comment, subscribe, wherever you listen to podcasts. We're trying to grow the show, get the word out, maybe getting some sponsors involved with the show. So all that stuff really helps us grow this show. I don't know what the algorithms do. Tony, you probably know what the algorithms do more than I do, but I know that all these things help grow the show. So would really appreciate your support. Those who already have, really appreciate it. And if you have any feedback for us about what you'd like to see us improve, your thoughts on the show, any feedback, send us a message at inthered@curtisjwhite.com or shoot us a message on social media. But that's all for this week. Tony, thanks for coming on. Everyone, keep enjoying your time on the bike. We'll talk to you soon.